Hello, my name is Ethan Polly, and today I want to share with you the Civil War, but specifically battles in South Carolina. First, let's take a look at Fort Sumter. This was fought April 10th, 1861. The Confederates won, and the casualties were Confederate 0, Union 0. However, a cannon did prematurely explode while firing a salute, evacuating the fort. Now we move on to Secessionville. This was fought June 16th, 1862. The Confederates won, and the casualties were Confederates 204 and Union 685. Now, I've already counted up all the casualties and losses on both sides and put them into a summary, and in that summary, you will find that the Union number here of casualties in Secessionville will be greater than all the Confederate casualties combined in these set of battles. Little reminder, these battles were before Sherman's march. Now we look at Simon's Bluff. This was fought June 21st, 1862. The Union won their first of two wins, and they will win with no casualties on either side. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so we've gotten 3 battles into this, and 2 of them, no one has died. This has got to be the most boring war in the history of ever. Let's go on to a different war, okay? Well, hold on, because the battles are about to get fiercer. I'm sorry it took so long to change slides. I was hitting the wrong button. Anyways, we look at Charleston Harbor now. Real quick, I want to point out that Charleston Harbor was a very important city for the Confederates. It was the biggest seaport in South Carolina, and farmers would take their crops and ship them through Charleston Harbor to other parts of the world where there was a high demand for South Carolina produce, and they were paid very handsomely. They got more pay from other parts of the world than they would in other parts of the U.S. So the Confederates it would be a big loss if the Confederates lost Charleston Harbor, because this is an extreme source of income. So, April 7th, 1863, this was fought. The Confederates won, good, thankfully for them, and the casualties were Confederate 14 and Union 22. Now we look at Fort Wagner. This was fought July 10th through 11th, 1863. The Confederates won, and no wonder, because they themselves had 12 casualties and the Union had 339. Now, a possibility of these numbers might have been how they were maybe holding the fort, so they were more safe from the bullets than the Union, but I guess that's a fun little thing that you could look up. Now we take a look at Grimble's Landing. This was fought July 16th, 1863. It was inconclusive, and the casualties were Confederate 18 estimate and Union, we don't know. Now we look at Fort Wagner 2. This was fought July 18th through September 7th, 1863. The Confederates won, and the casualties were Confederates 174 and Union 1,515. Now, this is a huge blow to the Union to have lost 1,515 of your men, and that's honestly, I don't know how you lose that many in a single battle. But real quick, two things I want to point out. One, this is not another fort called Fort Wagner. This is the same Fort Wagner as last time. However, it's the second time it was fought. And two, the Union actually had a lot more troops than the Confederates. Now we look at Fort Sumter too. This was fought August 17th through September 31st, 1863. It was inconclusive, and the casualties were Confederates, don't know, Union, don't know. Now we look at Charleston Harbor 2. Once again, not a different Charleston Harbor, same time, fought for the second time. September 7th through 8th, 1863, the Confederates won, and the casualties for the Confederates we don't know, but the Union we do know were 117. Now we look at Honey Hill, and I promise you, it may have been sticky, but it certainly was not sweet. This was fought November 30th, 1864. The Confederates won, and the casualties were Confederate 60 estimate and Union 746 casualty estimate. Now we look at Rivers Bridge. This was fought February 3rd, 1865. The Union won, and the casualties were a Confederate 170 estimate and a Union 92 estimate. Now, we're still going to look at the Civil War, but this time, instead of battles in South Carolina, we're going to look at people in South Carolina. Real quick, before we start, I want to point out that none of these people died in the Civil War. First, we look at Lieutenant General Huron Anderson. He was born near Statesburg, SC. He became a Confederate, and the reason he was so famous was because he won many different battles. He died at age 57. Now, Colonel Isaiah J.W. Steedham was born in South Carolina, and he was a Confederate. He became in charge over all the western defenses, and he died May 15th, 1917. Now, let's take a look at Mary Boykin Chestnut. She was born in Statesburg, South Carolina, March 31st, 1823. She was for the Confederates, and she wrote a diary that gives us an insight on Confederate government and Confederate private life. She died in Camden, South Carolina, November 22nd, 1886. By the way, her diary, since she had no children to pass it on to, she gave it to her dear friend, urging her to publish it once she was near death, and it became a bestseller. And then later, in 19-something, I don't remember when, just 19-something, and it was awarded some honor or medal of writing, but I can't remember what medal that was. I just know it was given a medal 100 years later. Now we turn the page to Robert Smalls. He was born in Beaufort, South Carolina, April 5th, 1839. He became part of the Union, and how he did that was he escaped the Confederacy by sailing a ship past checkpoints and into a Union brigade. The reason he did this was because originally he was a Confederate and he had a lot more privileges than blacks because he was a mix of black and white. However, a lot of his friends who were black were treated a lot more horribly than he was, and he decided that he did not want to serve an army that would do that to his friends. So he sailed that ship to the Union Brigade for him and his friends, and he had already been working with the Union, so he knew all the secret codes and stuff to get past all the checkpoints. Lucky for the Union, the ship held guns, ammunition, and secret documents containing Confederate Army information like ship docking times, where the armies were located, stuff like that. Later, he attained a seat in the House and Senate after the war. He died in Beaufort, South Carolina, February 23rd, 1915. Now, this is the summary. Battles 1, Confederate 7, Union 2, and Inconclusive 2. Casualties estimate. After all, we did see how some casualties were estimated and some had question marks indicating how we didn't know. So this is an estimate. Confederates 652 and Union an astounding 3,534. Now I get that it's an estimate. Confederates, I don't know, they might not have been 6,500 people. They might have been 631 maybe. But the Union, I don't care if it's an estimate or not, there's no way that the fact that it's an estimation could change these casualties that much to where it is not 3,500 people dead. That is a lot of people dead. And the time span of these battles was from April 10th, 1861 through February 3rd, 1865. Now, how did the Confederates blow it? I mean, they had only 650 people dead, and then the Union had 3,500 people dead. What in the world? Anyways, answering that question, how did the Confederates blow it? Well, to start with, Robert Smalls helped the Union a lot with those secret documents. But also, as I mentioned before, These battles were before Sherman came into South Carolina. When he did, he destroyed railroads, communications, food, South Carolina's industry, and South Carolina's economy. So basically, even if the Union had withdrawn all its troops, the Confederacy still would have lost because they would have had to join the Union because South Carolina was the only one left, and they had nothing. Anyways, he also kept marching on, beating back the Confederates, chasing them as far as he pleased. This does not mean he chased them until he had his fill of war. No. This meant he knew for a fact that he was going to win the Civil War. He was basically telling the Confederates, look, I'm going to chase you, but if I get tired, I'm going to sit down and have a rest. He literally told Abraham Lincoln, sent him a telegram saying, how would you like the Confederacy for Christmas? That was how sure he knew that he was going to defeat the Confederates. So, he finally cornered General Lee and the last organized group of soldiers and had them surrender. After that, the Confederacy fell apart and surrendered. Also, South Carolina was the only Confederate state who did well in the war. All the others almost immediately collapsed. A fun fact is that when John Wilkes Booth assassinated the president, he was trying to do one last thing for the Confederacy and collapse the Union, because there were two other men who were supposed to assassinate two other incredibly important people in the Union government. One saw that his target was sick in bed and couldn't bear to kill him, and the other only wounded his target, and he wrestled him to the ground while the shot brought guards and they captured the assassin. John Wilkes Booth was the only one to complete his mission, and therefore his accomplishment was the most famous. I learned this in a Civil War museum. Well, that is all for this PowerPoint presentation. That is the end of the Civil War. Battles and people in South Carolina. Thank you for joining me.